Hey, what's up, everybody? Isaac here, Civil Engineering Academy. Excited to be with you on another podcast episode. We are still in the middle of a move, so we are not settled yet. If you hear weird noises from family or dog, well, you know why. But I'm excited today. I bring an awesome guest today, Vince Marvin, who is a professional engineer, a structural engineer, got his structural engineering license and has been designing all kinds of fun stuff since he's gotten that. But he's a supervisor and talks about his journey from going from engineer to supervisor, some of the bumps in the road and challenges and opportunities that he has seen, but also some of the really nice things that he has seen as being a supervisor. We also talk about his journey to become a professional engineer, as well as getting his SE license and the challenge that was, but also how anybody can do this and that there's a huge need for structural engineers out there and you can do that as well. Don't be discouraged by any numbers that are out there in terms of pass rates and such. So Vince is awesome. I hope you enjoy this episode. He's also helping engineers as a mentor and help structural engineers jumpstart their own careers. So we'll make sure we link his LinkedIn profile for you and you can reach out to him if you are on a path to become a structural engineer. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. So coming up right after this, I got Vince Marvin. See you in a minute. Hey, before we start diving into this awesome podcast episode with lots of nuggets of awesome wisdom that we're going to help you with, I want to take a moment to highlight our awesome partner, Civil Engineer Gear. As a civil engineer myself, this is hands down the go-to destination for sleek and professional looking day-to-day gear with a civil engineering flair. You can bet that it's mine for sure. So whether you're on the job site, the job office, you're burning the midnight oil studying for your exams, or you're just chilling at home on the weekends, which many of us do, there is civil engineering inspired products there that combine functionality and professionalism to be your companion, your best companion during those days you want to check out. I definitely love the comfortable t-shirts and sweatshirts. I'm wearing one right now. I don't start my day without a awesome drink, one of my favorite drinks, and their awesome canteens. We also have awesome mugs, and don't even get me started on the spacious bags that they have there. They're big enough for all of my personal protective equipment, my PPE, shove it all in there, carry it with me, and it's not so big that you can't carry it around. It's actually a perfect fit. You can use it for your gym clothes, you can use it for your camping gear, yoga, whatever it is, you name it, throw it in the bag. Now, the best part of all this is that shipping is free on all orders, so if you are interested in getting some sweet civil engineering gear, check it out at civilengineergear.com and make sure to treat yourself with some awesome gear and accessories tailored specifically to your professional and personal life as a civil engineer. Go check it out. You won't be disappointed. All right, Vince, we're rocking and rolling. Thanks for joining me on the Civil Engineering Academy podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Isaac. It's great to be here and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I feel bad. We talked about so much. I didn't hit record, but
yeah,
a lot of stuff we'll get back into.
Yep.
So I do always enjoy starting these out, just kind of getting your own background. I would love to know what got you interested in civil engineering. Maybe touch upon where you went to school and now what do you do? What are you doing now for work?
Gotcha. So actually what got me into civil engineering specifically was all the way back in high school. In my physics class, we had a balsa wood bridge competition, right? And, very common for high schoolers to do something like that. And one of the girls in my class, her dad had helped her. Her dad was an electrical engineer, but, engineer, right? And her bridge was by far the best one there. We ended up taking a scale that you would stand on, putting that on top of the bridge, and then a coffee can full of nails, a bowling ball, and we would push down on it. And it handled so much load. I was just amazed and mesmerized by it. So I definitely that was kind of the spark in my head of oh, okay, this is something that I enjoy. So it kind of got me into engineering, into civil engineering. I ended up going to college at Case Western Reserve University. I like to say I enjoyed it so much, I stayed to get my master's in 5 years. I ended up getting into what was called the BSMS program. So my senior year of undergrad, I took graduate level courses and they counted towards both degrees. So there was a group of us that ended up going that route. And it was great. It kind of gave us another year together, the group of us. I got to do some pretty cool research. It was one of those things that I always kind of knew in the back of my mind, like, I don't want to go into industry and working and then go back to school. I couldn't see myself doing that. So I figured, why not do it right now? So, with all that, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, went to college at Case Western Reserve University in Ohio. I ended up moving to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania here for my first job out of college, designing commercial buildings, hospitals, schools, one-story wooden banks, kind of things like that. The engineers there kind of, taught me how to be a professional, right? Like I remember asking one of the guys there, I was like, hey, where's the nearest post office? Right? Like, I'm brand new to a city. I have no idea. And he's like, oh yeah, just go down the street and turn. So, they kind of taught me how to, be an adult. But also I learned so much engineering from them. Just, some of the basics that you learn in college and applying it to the real world. Some, just common practices and procedures and, just normal detailing and things like that you get in the world that you don't really get in college. You have to actually just do it, right? So they taught me a lot of that. I ended up sitting for the SE license and getting my license there. Ultimately, I followed a coworker to a company in the industrial storage facility world. The office we were in did cryogenic liquid storage, mainly of liquefied natural gas. And it was a change. It was different. I know I originally was very worried about, like, oh my gosh, I'm going into a new industry and there's new codes and everything. And it was scary. I was pretty hesitant. But my former coworker, soon to be manager, was like, hey, look, steel and concrete are steel and concrete. It's the same code. P over A plus M over S. It works in both industries. Right? It's the fire codes. It's that type of stuff that really is different, but the basics of structural engineering are the same. So that kind of, took my worry away a little bit. I was there for about 4 years. I think actually almost 4 years on the dot. My last 3 years there, actually, I was the engineer of record and lead engineer on a large liquefied natural gas vaporization facility in Salt Lake City, Utah area. I ultimately went. Oh, that's your hometown?
Yeah.
Nice. So I ultimately, went from this individual contributor role of doing calculations and all that to it kind of morphed into a team lead, a lead engineer, where I was going to all the client meetings, going to all the internal project meetings, kind of divvying out work, saying, okay, these are the deadlines coming up. This is the work that needs to be done. Hey boss, I need one engineer full time and probably 1.5 designers full time for the next however many weeks. Right. So I got into that whole orchestrating role of trying to determine, who's doing what and what needs to be done to get the project going and still moving and complete. Ultimately, that I learned that I really liked being in that role of kind of leading people. And I got my current position as a structural engineering supervisor. After 4 years at the second company there, I've been at my current company, Lake Superior Consulting, for just over a year. It was October of 2022. So, it's been great. It's definitely a different role of being a people leader versus being an individual contributor and, running the calculations in depth on every single project, or, leading projects and stamping and leading people and determining, all of like the resource planning and bidding and, all of that. So it's definitely a different position that I am really enjoying.
Well, there is probably a ton to unpack there. Just, I guess I'm curious at the beginning for maybe other engineers that are just starting out into the structural engineering world. How difficult was it to start learning to be a professional? How difficult was that? Or what tips would you share for anybody starting out in that path?
So it was weird, right? Like growing up and going to college near your hometown and everything, like I always had my family very close. Moving to Pittsburgh, I was fortunate enough to move in and live with a buddy of mine that I went to college with. So, there was some familiarity there. But, there were actually three of us that first year, and we were just three kids that, just out of college, living in a new city. And it was interesting. But, going to work, they kind of taught me like, hey, you can't just like skip class. You can't just skip work today, So there was a lot of that. And then, they kind of taught me to be a little bit self-sufficient. You always hate being the person that like, oh my gosh, I can't figure this out. I'm going to go ask a question right away. Right. They kind of taught me to like go through that thinking process and the critical thinking of, all right, I have a problem with concrete. Where should I start looking? Okay, let's look in ACI 318 and then, kind of go through there and do a little bit more research. So definitely a different, different situation from being in college. But, the people around me, it definitely helped me, learn and become the person I am now.
So it sounds like it's helpful to have some sort of mentor or someone, other people that are in that space that can help guide you, raise you up a little bit and get your feet underneath you. So that,
yeah, absolutely. I know the company I was at, there was probably 6 to 8 engineers in the office. And just knowing that like, hey, if I'm working on a project, obviously go to the engineer that's leading it. But I was also assigned an unofficial mentor of like, hey, if you have any questions about anything, there's no stupid questions. There's no stupid anything, right? Go to this person, ask this person that question. And as I alluded to earlier, I mean, it was like one of my first weeks there. I'm like, hey man, where's the nearest post office? I got to mail my electric bill. Right. And it was just one of those, he kind of like laughed and shook his head and he's like, all right, well, it depends on where you want to go, but there's one right over there. So, it was definitely one of those situations where, having that person to go to and knowing that, I could ask him anything. It was definitely a relief to have that outlet and in that mentor there.
That's awesome. Well, help me unpack, how difficult is it from going from engineer, you're in the books doing the calculations, to going to be a supervisor and leading people now? How has that transition been for you, and what's been a surprise for you making that leap?
Yeah. It was a slow transition, to be honest. At my second company there, I was the lead engineer on a project, and it kind of just so happened that in the bid phase, I was doing all of the engineering, right? It was just a bid. We weren't going to throw too many people at it. And so I was doing that. And then once we won the project and, you're sitting in on all the client meetings and internal meetings and, all of that, it was definitely different. And then it kind of turned out to be that very quickly the project, got up and running, and I learned very quickly I didn't have the time to do everything myself. It was a massive project. So, kind of turned into, hey, I get another engineer to help me. And, me and this engineer, we would kind of divvy up the tasks. We would both do them. She was doing a lot more of the calculations and I was sitting in a lot more of the meetings, things like that. And then, at that point it just was, okay, well now I have 2 engineers that are helping me, and I have 2 designers that are full-time on the project, and, we're feeding them work in that. And so it definitely was different, transitioning into that. It wasn't too terribly hard, again, because it was kind of a slow process there. I think if it would have been just a day one, hey, here's your whole team, go out and lead them, it would have been way different there. And then just kind of getting into my official like supervisor role here. I knew I liked the position of kind of orchestrating things and being that leader. I was nervous about it though. I mean, I was truly like, oh my gosh, can I do this? And I know my wife actually talked me down, talked to me one day, and she's like, look, this project you've been doing for 3 years, like it's the same thing, only multiple projects. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I can do this. Right. So, she gave me that pep talk, and, here I am just over a year later, still enjoying the role as being a supervisor.
That's awesome. Are there, I guess, any tips for somebody that wants to be a supervisor? Was there any bumps in the road that you experienced as a supervisor, or tips that you would have for people that want to be?
Definitely some bumps in the road. I still remember one day going to my manager. It was kind of early in that project, and it was the beginning of COVID, right? So everything was shut down. We were all working from home. It was the beginning of the project. I had this other engineer doing a lot of work for me. And I remember sitting there one day of like, I don't really have anything productive to do, right? Like I have a meeting and then I have a half-hour break and then a meeting and then an hour break and then another meeting. And, it was just this like weird time. And I just had this moment of like, oh gosh, is this really it? Like, what am I doing? And I don't know. It was just weird. Right. And I talked to my manager. She goes, look, you're going to have those days, right? There are some days that you're just going to get pulled in so many directions. It just feels like you're not doing anything right, but you are. Just have faith in it. So there's definitely some hiccups there. I would say in terms of like tips or tricks or hacks or, whatever you want to call it, start off small. I mean, definitely start off small. If there is a project you're working on and it's a larger project that requires more than one person, go to your boss or the engineer of record or whoever's leading the project and say like, hey, look, I would appreciate if you would let me utilize another engineer 1 day a week, 2 days a week type thing. And, kind of be in charge and responsible for them in terms of helping them help me get the project going. I think taking that is a very low risk scenario that not only helps you become more comfortable with managing people, but also, helps the project keep going and shows your bosses that like you're capable of doing that type of work.
What are you finding that is most fulfilling as being kind of an engineering leader or supervisor?
Definitely watching the people that I'm supervising grow. It was like this weird, I never quite thought of that. To be honest, I was a swimmer my entire life. I even coached, youth swim leagues for a while, and like, watching swimmers get better and times get better is one thing, but being able to, especially over the past year or so, being able to watch the engineers that are on my team kind of go from a little bit younger and a little bit inexperienced to now, leading small projects and kind of using me as a soundboard, and basically taking that role and taking the project by the horns and running with it. So definitely that has been a great feeling for me. We also hired a brand new CAD technician straight out of school, and seeing him grow has been great. It started off of like, hey, here's the program here, talk to this other designer and kind of get learn the ropes of how we do it at the company to now he's setting up projects and using Adept and doing everything and it's he's definitely taken a step forward there. So
that's awesome.
That overall, that overall, just like seeing that growth has been great.
That's awesome. I want to kind of revisit your career path. You got your master's degree, you got your PE, you've got your SE now. Now you're in the position you're at. What do you say is the value of, let's say, getting your master's degree for someone going into structural engineering?
So I know a lot of companies now, based on their hiring and what they're looking for, a lot of them are looking for master's degrees. Some industries more than others, right? Admittedly, my master's degree didn't really translate much into real world applications. Like my research project was based on a historic pedestrian bridge that got burned, and we were looking at like the char factors and creep and stress and everything like that in wood, which there is an industry out there for that. Don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't the industry I went into. So I did, though, in my master's degree, I got to learn more structural based courses and structural based design type stuff. So like it did have a benefit there for me.
Yeah.
I think, it helps you stand out on resumes. I've been hiring for multiple positions and, looking at resumes. That's one of the things I look for is where you went to college, what kind of degree you have, do you have any relevant experience? Like, did you take a seismic design course in college, right? If you did, and that was a graduate level course, right, you probably wouldn't have been able to take that as an undergrad. So definitely there are benefits to it. I will admit though, 13 years in, if I were to be looking for a new job, I don't think anybody would be putting too much weight on whether I have a master's degree or not. I think at this point, it's more about what you can do and how well you can do it versus your college pedigree.
Okay. So the further you've gotten in your career, you're noticing experience is definitely outweighing what's on that pedigree.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it this way. Like if I'm hiring for a senior structural engineer that has been in the industry doing exactly what I'm asking them to do, I don't care if you have a master's or not. You're doing the job that I'm going to be hiring you to do. So like it's kind of one of those, it's important early in your career. It's definitely, there are definite benefits to it. But at some point it has less and less about the schooling and more about your experience and your abilities.
Okay, that's good. So walk me through then the PE. What's been the value for that in your career at when, I guess at the stage that you got it?
Yeah. So, getting the PE is invaluable, right? Like I can't put I can't put in words how valuable it's been to my career. And I feel like that's fairly common in structural engineering. A lot of the stuff that we do, almost everything we do, has to have a PE stamp on it. When it goes out for construction, it has to have a stamp on it. Excuse me. Other industries, that may not always be the case, right? Some electrical designs may not need it. If you're doing like lighting plans, if you work at an MEP company that, for buildings or anything like that, sometimes they don't need it. A lot more of that is based on the contractor and inspections in the field. And, as long as you're designing by code, you don't need to stamp it type thing. Whereas structural engineering, I mean, everything needs to be stamped. So I knew early on that like, hey, getting my license is a big deal. I am going to do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I ended up getting it
at work.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did. It's tricky because, depending on how your company is set up, they may say, hey, here's a yearly raise for you to get your now that you have your license, or they may say, hey, you just passed your license, here's a bonus, right? And different companies do things different ways. But yeah, it definitely helped there. And then now I can lead projects. I can be that engineer of record. I can have a team of people working for me on that project, working with me on that project. I've worked with engineers that are 20 years in and they don't have their license, and the downside is that they will always need somebody else to be involved with the project, to review it, to stamp it, so it's never them as the top engineer on a project. There's always going to be somebody else.
Yeah, I think it's critical for any civil engineer to get that on. I'm hoping anyone listening to this, it's on your list to get for sure. How many states are you licensed in?
Oh boy. Right now I think 11.
Wow.
Yeah. So the company that we're the company that I work for. We have the mindset of we work all over the country, and just based on where our clients have their assets and everything. And if we get a new project in a new state, we kind of look around to say, hey, is Vince licensed there? Is Isaac licensed there? Is Joe licensed there? Right? Like nobody. Yep. Great. Then who has the availability? All right, Vince, go get licensed in that state. So that's kind of been a little bit of how it's gone. Hey, that project in Salt Lake City, I got licensed out in Utah because of that. Right? There's no rhyme or reason other than I had a project there. I was going to be the engineer of record. I'm going to go get licensed there. So, and then especially having the SE, I know, the PE is a good step. The SE is kind of, the next step if you really want to be, at the top of your game and really want to have as much freedom as possible. I'm able to get my structural engineering license in Utah, which The project was a risk category 4 project, so they needed a structural engineer to stamp everything. It couldn't be a professional engineer. So getting the SE then, if the PE opens up doors, the SE opens up another, right? So there's definitely some states that require it for the type of work you may be getting.
Makes sense. Could I ask you, there's many people that want the SE, but are afraid to kind of head that route because they know it's a challenging exam. Could you touch on your experience with the SE? And I know the NCES is making changes to that to go CBT. I don't know if you've heard how that's changing, but there's a lot of questions as to what they're going to be doing with that and how they're going to implement it. But what was your experience taking that exam for those that want it? What advice would you give to people that are looking at taking that exam?
Yeah. So, first I'm gonna kind of go off on a tangent right away. There are some states out there. So I only took the SE exam. I did not take the PE exam, but majority of the states recognize the SE exam for your PE, right? So like, it's kind of one of those, like, yes, you've taken the test, you know what you're doing. Some states, especially I ran into this in Washington, you have to take the PE, you have to get your PE, and then you have to take the SE to get an SE in Washington. So like, it's a little bit weird. And they even have on their website a disclaimer that says, if you didn't take the PE, don't apply. You're not going to get it with just the SE, which I found like crazy. I was like, oh, well, I guess I can't do work there at all. So, there is that aspect. So I would suggest, if you're kind of on the fence, go for the PE first. I know in Isaac, I'm sure you know a lot more about this. I believe it's April of this year, they're switching the civil structural PE to be more structural based versus the broader civil based. And my take is that they're doing that more to be aligned with the SE. I think right now the SE is like steel, concrete, wood, masonry, whereas the PE is a little bit more broad over civil engineering topics. Honestly, I don't know how they're going to do the SE as written, or I'm sorry, is CBT, because there is the written portion in the afternoon, right? Like it's showing your calculations. It's actually designing something. So I'm sure they're going to make it work, and I'm sure they have a good strategy for it. I just don't know what that is. As far as the SE, now to get a little bit more into your question, I took it over two different sections. There's the vertical portion and the lateral portion. I did not try to take them at the same time. One, it would have just been way too much topic to study. And two, and everybody I'm sure will experience this once they take any of the PE or the SE exam, after one day of an 8-hour test, your brain is just fried, right? Like you go home and it's like, how quickly can I eat dinner and get into bed? Right? Like you don't want to even think about waking up the next morning and going to do that all over. So that is definitely some advice that I would give. The vertical portion wasn't bad. I mean, it's kind of what I expected. It's a lot of the type of work that I was doing in building design. A lot of beam design, a lot of columns, very, I don't want to say basic, but like the more common elements of structural engineering. The lateral portion was a challenge. Admittedly, I took 3 different times before I passed the lateral portion. I mean, it was tough. It was, not only are they asking you to design things, but obviously it's the SE test. They're asking you to design a concrete framed special moment frame building in a seismic design category D. And it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't done that before. Right. You can study for it all you want, but again, it kind of gets back into the nitty gritty of the code and, just the nuances of the code. So I definitely struggled the first 2 times. The third time I kind of left there of like, if I pass, I wouldn't be surprised, but if I failed, I wouldn't be surprised. Luckily I passed and, here we are.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the pass rates for the SE, they're low. They're low. And it kind of flashes that this is a very difficult exam, but do you have any other thoughts as to why the pass rates on that is a lower score?
I don't know. I know there's somebody on LinkedIn. I can't think of who it is, but he has been tracking all the pass rates for the SE exam since its inception in like 2010 or 2011. And the trend line just keeps going down and down and down. Some years are better than others. Obviously the data is up and down, but yeah, the trend line is going down. And I think the code is getting so complicated, and you have to know so much about everything. Look at ASC 7. I think it's 705 to 710. The wind code, the wind section went from 1 chapter up to like 5 chapters, and it's breaking it down. It's getting more in depth, more specific about things. Which, is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. I can't say. All I can say is that you need to follow the code and you need to know the code. I think that could be part of why it is getting more and more intricate, or more and more difficult to pass it, because the code is getting more and more intricate.
That definitely makes sense. I had a question. We were talking about pass rates, talking about the SE. What would you tell our audience? Well, I mean, what advice would you give to inspire people to become a structural engineer when they're seeing those kind of numbers coming at you? Because there's a huge need, I think, for structural engineers, and I don't think we promote ourselves, the civil engineering world, enough out there in the first place. So, would you have any advice or any tips to inspire the next round of people?
Yeah. So one, just don't be afraid of the numbers, right? Yes, it is a low pass rate, but you can pass it. It's not like it's an impossible test. Yes, the codes are getting trickier. Yes, they're getting more complicated. Yes, the test is seems to be getting harder in that sense. I think it's more about actually dedicating the time. Don't be overconfident. I'll admit I passed the vertical portion on the first try, and I think I went into the lateral portion like, oh yeah, this is easy, and just completely like failed miserably, right? And so I was just overconfident, and I psyched myself up in my head. I wasn't humble enough to study as much as I needed to. So definitely spend the time to study. Definitely look for different resources. There's tons of different study courses out there. There's tons of different books available. I know a lot of it is just repetition, right? You could do the same problem, same type of problem over and over and over. And then, you do it once and like, okay, yeah, I know that. But if you do it 10 times, you're going to know exactly in the code where to go to try to solve that problem. So definitely, take the courses, put in the time to study, be humble about it. Schedule your day out. Like, hey, I want to study from 7 to 8 at night on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? Do that. Do not miss that time. Do not have distractions. I know there was a lot of times I'd be studying in my office on the weekend, and I realized after like 6 hours, I'd be like, what did I do today? And I realized I was on my phone. I was looking at Facebook. I was, doing all that stupid stuff and not actually studying. Yeah, LinkedIn now. But yeah, definitely treat it as serious as it is, because that's going to be the way that you're going to pass it.
And I think there's a huge need for structural engineers in our industry and in the world in general. So
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid of these exams. They're just stepping stones to get to where you need to be, and you can definitely get there. So,
yep.
Well,
also, I will say, I will say, don't feel like you need to take the exam as soon as you're ready, as soon as you're eligible. Take the exam when you feel you're more ready, right? I actually delayed taking my exam, I think maybe a year from when I was first eligible, because I just didn't feel confident enough. I took that time, I started studying, I did all of that. So definitely, put in the work, wait till you have some level of readiness and some confidence in it, and then go into it prepared and confident about it.
Awesome. Vince, this has been awesome. I think I'll end with this last question, but one of the things that you talk about on LinkedIn is being a mentor, but also teaching structural engineers how to really jumpstart their careers. So why don't you talk about that a little bit and what you do, what you offer?
Yeah, so I started my journey on LinkedIn just kind of posting just like, hey, how do you act at work? Like, how do you act in meetings? How should you, carry yourself and do things like that? Trying to take the lead by example and spread it out to who I could through LinkedIn. I went through a series then of seismic design, just kind of like a practical, you don't need to know all the very intricate nitty gritty details, but like if you're doing a seismic design, here's where you start, here's your steps, here's your, where you end, and you can go from there. I recently got involved with ASCE and the SEI mentoring program that they have there. I think, ultimately I'd like to be able to reach more people, more engineers. So I feel like LinkedIn is a great way to do that. And whether it's, just kind of going over situations that I've had in my workday or going over technical topics, things like that, I want to get the information out there. So, I feel like it's one of those things that I had a great group of engineers that I started working with that kind of helped me. And I understand that I was lucky to have that great group of engineers. So I'm trying to be that great group of engineers through LinkedIn and, help young engineers kind of, learn the ropes of becoming a professional and becoming an engineer and, kind of doing what needs to be done for the profession. So I don't have anything specific right now. I do have some things in the works, but just again, basically trying to teach young engineers how to be engineers.
We'll reach out to Vince. We'll leave your contact info for reaching out to you on LinkedIn for others to reach out to you. So Vince, this has been awesome. Tons of insight, tons of good information. Appreciate you jumping on and sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Isaac. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Vince. See ya.